So I wanted beans, but I wanted variety of beans, because I all of a sudden discovered that those heirloom variety of beans are being sold, and I'm like, oh, they're pretty, I want them.
Well, what's the definition of heirloom versus whatever we buy at the grocery store?
Well, what we buy at the grocery store, like everything else in the vegetable world, has been not necessarily genetically modified, but genetically modified in a way that it becomes shelf stable and is easy to pack, easy to grow, is resistance to herbicides and all that other stuff, right?
Herbicides meaning anything
pesticides.
that they spray on it. It's just
Right.
Okay.
So heirloom are bean varieties that have been grown all around the world prior to the advent of chemical or mechanical means. But now people are starting to grow heirlooms and using normal hybridization to make them grow more and be more prolific with their crop, the actual bean that we eat. And so I knew of Rancho Gordo up in Northern California, Napa, but he's like really expensive, and I really wanted to find somebody closer to me.
It's kind of like a brand name in the bean world.
He kind of is, yeah, and a lot of people know about him, and he does grow a lot of heirloom beans, and he also buys from other people that do. And I was just searching beans near me. I mean, I think it was that easy. And
that kind of a search.
And I found this guy by the name of Mike. His place is called Del Rio Rey.
I think it is Del Rio Rey. I believe.
Beans, and it ends up he's in Valley Center, which is a half hour away from us. I'm like, oh, I can't get much closer than that, except we're growing them in my backyard. So you and I went up to go talk to Mike, and he's a great guy. He's an older gentleman. He was a researcher at Berkeley, and he ended up owning this or buying this property up in Valley Center and growing beans amongst other things. And he gave us beans, I mean, to grow, to try to figure out what we can do as value-added product, as he called it. And he was fascinating. He had so many stories to tell, and we learned more about beans, I think, in that 3 hours that we were there than I had my entire life. These are gorgeous. They're almost a work of art and by themselves. And there's like 6 varieties of beans that we find in the grocery store, but yet here, I don't know, there's at least a dozen to 20 different varieties of beans. There's 2 that I'm very excited about. So the first one is a perennial bean, which I never even knew would exist. That a perennial is a plant that grows, and you may trim it back or maybe not, and it just keeps producing a crop, like an orange tree. And I have little babies here. I planted them last Saturday, and today is Tuesday. So I got little baby beans sprouting up there. There's a couple more just poking their way through these marigolds that I have here. There was one right there. So they're gonna climb up these thistle ropes about 10 feet in the air.
What's the purpose of the marigolds?
They're a companion plant. In the 10 minutes of research I did on pole beans, they like marigolds. I'm so excited because perennials is like the unicorn of the gardening world. You don't actually have to replant them
over and over again.
Over and over again. The second one is what was called a dry farm bean, which means that you really don't have to water it. The only water it needs is what it gets naturally in the environment.
I think he mentioned it was one good rain soaking.
Yeah, and you really don't have to water it after that.
That's kind of amazing.
It's amazing. So what else should we be growing in a semi-arid climate except for dry farm vegetables? So he gave both of us an entire pack.
Right there.
Right here. An entire pack, and they're called tepary. I think that's how you pronounce it. Tepary beans. They're a small bean, kind of like in between a lentil and a pinto. Closer to a pinto. The thing about these is not only are they dry farmed, but they are one of the highest sources of protein in the bean world. And fiber, which is mind-blowing. That why aren't we doing this?
Right.
Once again, we're given lima beans grows in the grocery store, or we could have something that societies have lived on for centuries.
And what was interesting too is that he said that the different beans have different flavor profiles.
Yeah,
so
who knew?
And the stuff that he served us was absolutely delicious.
Yeah, he made a soup for us, which was fascinating, and it was so good. It was just beans and a handful of vegetables, and I think it was some vegetable stock, even as vegan. More bean plants here growing up on the trellis. I got beans everywhere. And I planted some along these tomato plant cages too. So they're all about 6 to 9 inches tall, and I have here a pole bean growing up this pole. I guessed right on that one.